appears that there is a split emerging on the right with respect to the Trump administration's approach in Venezuela. Conservative firebrand Steve Bannon, for instance, said earlier this week, quote, MAGA fully supported President Trump and a precision military exercise. You want to take Maduro and try him? Go take him and try him. The bigger issues here people are concerned about is like President Trump saying, hey, we're going to do boots on the ground. And last night, we're going to rebuild the country.
On Sunday, after Maduro's capture, President Trump told The Atlantic, quote, you know, rebuilding there and regime change, anything you want to call it, is better than what you have right now. Can't get any worse. Tuesday night, Trump also said that Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil over to the U.S. He added that the oil would be sold at market price and that as president, he'd ensured the money would be used to benefit the U.S. and Venezuela.
Republican Senator Eric Schmidt is a little less concerned about boots on the ground and regime change, saying it's mostly just noise. We had boots on the ground for about 5 hours when we pulled off perhaps the most complicated and secret mission in the modern era. I think what you're seeing is a greater application of the appropriate power in our hemisphere to protect Americans. Our next guest, executive director of the American Conservative magazine, is Curt Mills, who raised a separate concern on Politico. He wrote, probably the most significant result of January 3rd is that the U.S. just ceded the high ground to rally world support to defend Taiwan. It's pretty telling that Trump's White House bled allies, even on the global hard right, with this maneuver. Curt Mills joins us now to discuss further. Curt, welcome back to Rising.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So there is a big split that I'm seeing on the right in terms of how supportive people are of this action. Obviously, Donald Trump, at least rhetorically, talked about being a different kind of Republican, breaking from neoconservatism of the past, saying no new wars, all that sort of thing. Whether in practice it ever really resembled a significant change is certainly up for debate. Where does this intervention register? Because on one hand, it now does not seem like we're doing regime change in terms of changing the actual entire regime or the structure of the government. On the other hand, it does seem, I don't know how you can get around the idea that it's not an active war or significant military exercise to abduct the president of another country. What are your thoughts as we process this decision?
Well, it didn't seem like we were going to kidnap Nicolas Maduro of Delta Force a week ago. So excuse me if I keep my powder dry on predictions here. I think the administration is effectively and potentially dangerously politically chosen a half measure. They have done leader change. They have gotten rid of a long-desired scalp in Nicolas Maduro, both long desired for personal reasons, I think for the President of the United States, and for ideological reasons for the Secretary of State. But they have, of course, not replaced the regime. In fact, in some ways, they've probably strengthened the regime. They're trying to do explicit deals. They are anointing potential successors. They are picking and choosing amongst Venezuelan politicians. And so it's a curious sort of half measure that the administration has chosen. And what you see is basically the potential, although there is the veneer of unanimity on the right, the potential for a divide on two fronts. Those who want to see the Machado woman, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, basically be installed, or her party be installed in Venezuela, are unhappy with this result. And I think you've seen leading neoconservatives such as Elliot Abrams openly sound the alarm on that. And of course, this is sort of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who is very tied in, of course, with the diaspora Latino community in the United States. This is his natural constituency. And on the other side, you see a clear fear of boots on the ground, of regime change, of nation building. And what I think is different about this episode, or has become different in Trump's second term, is that Trump seems more openly flirtatious with this language. Trump himself has obviously always defined himself against the sort of Bush-wing Republican politics, against neoconservative foreign policy. But you see him sort of flirt like, well, why couldn't we do this? Why couldn't we make Iran great again? Why couldn't we make Venezuela great again? That kind of thing. And, I'll leave it to sort of Senator Rand Paul, who's observed the amount of time that Trump is spending with leading sort of neocon hawks like Lindsey Graham.
You mentioned in the Politico piece that what's particularly distressing is the clear lack of a plan. And I want to talk a little bit about that because a lot of people trying to figure out what the next steps look like, particularly when Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, has been saying one thing to people that live in Venezuela on television and possibly saying something else to the president, but she has forcefully condemned what the president has done.
Yeah. Sorry. What exactly is the question? I
So my
apologize.
question is, what is the clear plan forward when you're looking at it? What would you make of what the
Oh,
clear plan forward would look like, knowing that there's
there's
somebody
not
in
a
there
clear
that's a
plan.
Maduro, committed to supporting Maduro from what I'm reading?
Yeah, no, there's definitely not a clear plan. I think there is a desire to quote take the oil and have the glamour of a surgical strike. But again, like I mean, the people who know what they're talking about here, the sort of the energy firm or the energy consultant Rystad talks about. It would take years and years and years in investment, basically 2x of what the U.S. oil firms do on development currently to even get this stuff online in any kind of plausible timeline during the Trump, what remains of the Trump era. And so it's not clear what they wanted here. I think Trump was personally offended by the players within the Venezuelan scene. He was, I think, pretty clearly offended by Machado getting the Nobel Peace Prize, accepting it, and him not getting it, even though she dedicated it to him. I think he was clearly personally offended by Maduro's. He said it himself. I mean, he said Maduro basically stole his dance moves. I think stuff like this, the sort of Michael Wolff gloss on it, the sort of personalistic politics shouldn't be underrated here. And then I think into the breach, into the void, came operators like Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who have held long standing grudges against left-wing, communistic, socialistic, hard left, whatever you want to call it, governments in the region, and have wanted to use American force of arms. And then on top of that, there has been, as exemplified, and I think very positively in the national security strategy put out by the administration late last fall, there has been a desire to bring America home, bring America focusing on hemispheric defense. But hemispheric defense need not be hemispheric anarchy. And there is the risk now, and I sort of indicated it, that if the U.S. is only pure competitor, China, number one, takes this as a license to, let's say, kidnap or murder William Lai of Taiwan, or to invade the island outright, or two, cause chaos or cause chaos in the region for Uncle Sam. I think that this maneuver, although tactically successful in the medium to long run, could be looked at as ruinous and reckless.
One of the ways conservatives, Marco Rubio himself has put it like this, and then I've seen, some of the kind of America First people try to justify this along the lines of, well, when we were talking about less regime change, less interventionism, we were really just talking about the Middle East, which is so far away and has different culture and different religion and was not, ready for democracy, and we realized that, and everything we did there was a mistake. But this is Venezuela. It's in our backyard. It is part of America. Being America first means, sure, paying attention to America, where our interventions maybe can be argued about in some way, but don't have quite the same level of disastrous track record as trying to, single-handedly rebuild the Middle East. That's the difference. Is that a kind of explanation? You saw, for instance, I know you pay a lot of attention to conservative, what people are saying on social media, that the trends among the new right, those kinds of things. You see people like Matt Walsh, who's not a fan of interventionism, saying, well, but I'm happy for this because this is America, this is good. Is that a kind of explanation that will work for the younger conservatives, the online conservatives, the new class of people who've made anti-interventionism and a different Israel policy and a different Middle Eastern policy like their whole personality and something that's very important to them, and the thing they liked about Trump? Is that person saying, okay, this is the last straw for me? Or do they go along with the kind of Matt Walsh explanation that, oh, yeah, this is different, it's okay?
Well, I think Walsh is not an unimportant sort of representative or avatar of the perspective that you are articulating, but I think it's a sort of complex picture. I would say, number one, the tail risks of this are actually in some ways greater than intervention in the Middle East. I mean, say what you will for knocking over Iraq, Libya, Syria, and maybe Iran, the migration risks, the immediate risks of terrorism, frankly, are basically not entirely, but are in general absorbed by Europe. If the U.S. knocks over Venezuela and causes a Middle Eastern-style refugee crisis, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go to the United States of America. I mean, this is what is pretty extraordinary about it. Say what you will for the Maduro government. The Maduro government was cooperating with the U.S. on deportation flights to that country. The Maduro government, basically was open to a massive deal. Not to say that imperial wars of plunder in the region are necessarily good policy, but they were open to a deal for the country's resources for trade, and the government did this anyways. I mean, it just seems as if the U.S. was getting 95% of what it wanted from the status quo. Why take on all this risk? For 5% more. I do think, again, at a gut level, at a sort of man on the street level, arguing that the U.S. should be involved in the region makes a lot more sense than arguing that the U.S. should necessarily care about who governs Donetsk or for regime change in Tehran. But the problem is that the constituency and the ideology driving this is actually pretty old guard, Bush wing, neoconservative. Yeah. And I think, you see when, if you've got Lindsey Graham on the bus, I think people can kind of, it doesn't pass the laugh test that this is a different foreign policy.
Curt Mills, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Next up, former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy is vowing to give up social media in 2026. He says online interactions are a trap for politicians. We'll discuss.